Hey, and it's Paul Tyler, and welcome to another Innovation Hour. Laura, welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be back. And today
Back.
we have with us
Yeah, go ahead.
two of our favorites. Are we allowed to say favorites, Paul?
Favorites app. Yeah. Okay. Yes. I have a pair of
Yeah.
socks from this guy. So
Maybe that's what it
yes,
takes.
favorite.
Maybe some swag. Okay. Well, we have Brent and Bobby from Benekiva with us today, and many of you know them, and they're familiar faces, very active in the insurtech community. So we're happy to welcome them here with us, and let's join the conversation.
Yeah. Okay, Brent, Bobby, great to have you back. Okay, I feel like we've spent a lot of quality time. We just had a solve-a-thon. I mean, first off, love to go into and get your thoughts, but start out, maybe tell people who are you, what do you do for those people who are in some like dark corner of the insurance world and haven't heard what your product is.
Yeah, so I'm Brent Williams. I'm the founder and CEO of Benekiva. And prior to Benekiva, I was a financial advisor and built a very substantial practice and kept running into the same issues over and over again, working with policyholders, carrier beneficiaries, specifically in the claims and customer servicing processes. I often have this joke that, we've had insurance for almost 300 years, yet we still process claims like we did 300 years ago. So we decided that we needed to solve that issue and provide a claims system to carriers for the benefit of policyholders and beneficiaries to basically process claims and customer service items anywhere, anytime, and from any device. So that's what we set out to do. Bobby, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. Bobby Srivastav, co-founder and chief product officer of Benekiva. I lead our product innovation implementation with our carriers and with our team. Been in the been in the technology fields for a long time, and have worked for companies like PepsiCo, AIG, and Center for Creative Leadership. And when I heard about the problem, I was working on another startup and really fell in love with the whole issue around how life insurance and what does it mean for the user, right? We all automatically think that the beneficiaries are going to be taken care of, but they're not, right? And when you really deep down look at the claims process, it's very much antiquated, as Brent mentioned. So really excited to join as a founder and solve and help, work. There's four of us as founders and really go solve this problem.
Yeah, excellent. So, once again, LinkedIn. This is just hard, Laura. So anyway, we're back up streaming again here. We do have the full recording for everybody who does this. One day, probably when we're out of this pandemic, it'll all work flawlessly. But we got four people on. If you're on, hey, listen, say hi, and we'll get you going and part of the conversation. Listen, I think the problem you've identified, there are a lot of good things you're doing. I think it shows in the number of customers you're picking up. One, you really understand, you've taken time, Brett, to understand the problem, understand it from 3 or 4 or 5 different ways. You got Bobby involved, who sort of brings this, like, Bobby, sorry to sort of, I'll give you my intro as sort of the industrial strength implementer, okay, who's gets strategy but understands how to work with an organization and structure that matches their speed and that cadence. I mean, is that, Bobby, am I like misrepresenting kind of your role?
Can I steal that? I think that's like awesome. I'll steal that.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Yeah. So big, huge value. I mean, people say death claims. What really? That's a hard problem. It is. Like, why is this such a hard problem for organizations? I mean, and I think I do think there are at least a couple, 3 or 4 reasons, but I'd love to hear from you since you've all spent so much time focusing on this. Why is this hard? It's writing a check.
Yeah, I think death. So we process more than just death claims. We process disability, long-term care, some other products as well. But death claims specifically, when you think about the claim perspective, from a death claim perspective, a lot of carriers or a lot of organizations have this thought process of, well, we're going to sell a life policy. It's going to sit on the books for 30 or 40 years. And then we're going to have a claim, a single one-time claim, right? And which is true. I mean, that's a true statement. However, what we've proven is, if you give a good experience during that one claim process, you have the opportunity to serve the beneficiaries, offer up your products and services, which they want, and then potentially retain those assets. But if you don't, if you look at it just from a perspective of, okay, we're going to have this policy on the books and we're going to pay one claim, then you're missing the boat. I mean, you are missing the boat. What research indicates that when a death claim check is sent, a check is sent and it goes to the beneficiary, that beneficiary deposits that money in their bank, and then that money's gone. So the money went from the carrier to a bank, right? And then somebody else picks it up. Our thought process is, why wouldn't you try to retain those assets? Good sales techniques often say you're much better off at selling your current client base than you are to go get a new client base. So why wouldn't you start building that relationship to put you in the position to at least have an opportunity, not a guarantee, but an opportunity to serve the beneficiaries and retain those assets? To us, it was just a simple, why aren't carriers doing this? Well, they're not, because they don't have the technology to do that. So we said, let's give them the technology.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bobby.
And we get that feedback all the time from, folks that are from the industry, but not so much on the life side, or B, they're just listening to our problem and saying, why hasn't this been solved? And if you really look at the entire claims value chain for life, people will understand why. Correspondence to all the different rules and interest validation and documentation that's needed, and the workflow, right? That work moves. Like there's triaging when it comes to disability, for example. It could be, a contestable. So how can a carrier keep up with all of these items and pay that check? So that's where we come in, and we really want to streamline that process so that what Brent said, if you give customers a smooth process, they'll remember it, and you have the opportunity to retain that asset.
Yep.
Yeah, and just to sort of amplify what you're saying on both ends, Brent, I worked at a large company, a few years back with a very large sales force, and we had a program specifically for delivering those death claim checks, and agents fought for the opportunity to be part of that for the very reason that you said, and it was kind of hard to actually explain to senior execs why this really was a big deal, because typically the operation, especially death claim, I mean, unfortunately, and I apologize to anybody who's paying claims in the insurance industry, they generally don't have that big of a voice, especially on the life insurance side. It's kind of the second and third, stepchild, of a lot of the operational areas.
Yeah.
So I saw the value to it, and I think it's also one of those kind of emotional points where I've talked to advisors who deliver death claim checks, and especially if you're somebody who sold the case and you delivered the death claim check, that's transformative for people's careers.
Yep.
Yeah, and Bobby, on your point, I think once you get inside a company, these back end systems are so flipping complicated. I think at that carrier, we literally counted up our admin systems for our life insurance operation. And again, what's a system? There are all kinds of definitions, but stated number was like 70 different systems to process it. So you think about this: I'm a person paying death claim. Wait a second. Okay, yes, it's a case. Okay, where do I go for that value?
Yeah.
And is that even in a system? It may have been an older policy. I may have to go back to a spreadsheet and do some calculations off some manuals. So Bobby, am I off? Am I off base? Oh, and carriers
You're
like
stating
yeah.
You're stating the industry issue, and it's a serious issue, right? It's there's not a lot of technology. The focus has been all the front end of the house, which we should focus on that. But if you don't have your foundation right, which is like your core back office systems, then it'll break. The process will break. I don't care how sexy your intake or your new business solution is. If you're not able to do it smoothly on the claim side, that process is broken. So that's why that stat exists, right? Less than, what is it, 4 or 6% that Brent shared goes. It doesn't. It comes back. That's a very low percentage. That to me is like a hot lead versus a cold lead, right?
Right.
We actually went into a discussion with the carrier that said, "Oh, I just allocate this much money for new business." I'm
Customer
like,
acquisition. Yeah.
that's awesome. But what about your existing book? You're not working your existing book. You're looking at that as, oh, I don't care. I'll just go. I have this budgeted. That's not the way. That's not how you should look at it.
Yeah. Well, I think your product is timed perfectly. Okay, and I'm sure for good reason. I think death claims got zero attention. The whole processing for a number of years because I think we all, as an industry, were budgeting or allocating IT resources based on ROI. What's the ROI of improving your death claim process? Well, I can't figure that one out now. The whole sort of like sheetment process, the states made a number of carriers run better. I think convinced carriers they needed to look at this area. Now you flip to COVID, and people got evacuated, they got to come out of the office and be able to perform this stuff. Tell us, how has that helped the cause?
Yeah, it's helped our cause quite a bit. We've actually landed 3 carriers as part of this COVID process because, the carriers that are live in production on our platform, the minute COVID hit, they shifted 100% of their claim staff to work from home. And we've said all along that our platform can allow carrier claim staff to process claims anytime, anywhere, any device. And now we've had, unfortunately, with a negative situation like COVID, we as Benekiva have had the opportunity to prove that theory. So we've proven that now. We actually had a claim staff person processing claims at 10:38 p.m. at night using their company iPhone. Now, I can only imagine how the policyholder or beneficiary felt at 10:39 p.m. when they got the confirmation that their claim is being processed and paid. Check your bank account. We as a society have always been kind of grilled that, banking, insurance, those organizations, how many times have you heard, oh, they work bankers hours, right? 9 to 4, right? Because things only happen from 9 to 4. But I can only imagine how that policyholder or beneficiary felt when they got their claim paid at 10:39 p.m. at night. I can imagine the next day they were sharing that experience with a lot of other people. And that was what our mission was. We didn't build Benekiva. We started with a beneficiary first mindset. We said, and to us, a beneficiary is anybody who's making a claim on a policy, whether that's a death claim, a disability claim, a long-term care claim, it really doesn't matter. Sometimes the beneficiary could be the policyholder in those cases, right? But at the end of the day, if we build a solution with a beneficiary first mindset and take care of the people, then that will create opportunities for sales and, NPS scores to increase and things like that. To me, being in the industry for as long as I have, the time of claim is where the rubber meets the road. That's where you are going to be judged and juried on how you performed as an insurance company. And I think finally, insurance companies are starting to realize that, hey, maybe we need to put some focus in this area, because if we do, then we can have at least an opportunity.
And if I may add to what Brent has said, it's important to have that. What we've learned is when we have that beneficiary first mindset, what ends up happening is we're improving the ability to get the job done on the carrier staff side.
Yes.
Now that is power. Now we're empowering people instead of looking at spreadsheets to calculate, making errors. I mean, Brent and I have spent countless times when a claim staff has said, oops, there's so many times I've made these errors, and it's an error that causes carriers a loss. Yeah. What a carrier can do. I gave you the wrong benefit amount. Now I need you to send me back the money. They're not going to do that. But those are errors in the process, and those errors occur because of the number of systems that they're using. And the claim staff, we have just as much empathy for them as we do with the beneficiary, because if you don't give tools to people to get their jobs done, you're going to make mistakes. Quality is going to decrease. So when you start to shift that, right, start to say, let's build it from a customer first focus and invite the stakeholders like the claim staff, it's just a win-win-win across the board.
Yep. Yeah, we've often said that our experience focused on three sets of individuals. Obviously, the policyholders and beneficiaries. The second experience we focused on was carrier claim staff. We wanted to make their lives and their jobs easier. As a matter of fact, based on the research we did about 3 years of research before writing one line of code in Benekiva. The one piece of research we got wrong was we felt that some of the carrier claim staff probably wouldn't like Benekiva because it does automate and take care of some of those mundane tasks that people are doing today. However, when we came to the marketplace, the opposite occurred. Our carrier claim staff said, my gosh, I love it. We're finally getting some attention. We're finally getting some good tools. Now I can focus my time on more value-added work for the organization, as opposed to just these mundane tasks of sending out correspondence or statements or doing interest calculations. So, the third customer experience we talk about is the advisors. And the reason we did this is 100% when I was involved in the death claim process, 100% of the time, and I'm not saying this just to sell anybody, 100% of the time, we replaced a deceased client with a new client. We replaced a terminated life policy with a new life policy, because the easiest life insurance policy I can ever sell is to someone who just received the benefit, right? I don't have to explain features and benefits of life insurance at this point. They felt it. Right? But the first question I got as an advisor was, what do I do with the money? Now that is your opportunity to serve the beneficiary and potentially put a new plan in place, which includes products and services for this beneficiary. That's the piece that I think these carriers are missing out on. When you take a carrier that's sending out $900 million in claims a year, and you're getting less than 2% of that back in new sales, that to me is an opportunity.
Speaking of opportunities and how COVID has changed a lot of things over the last few months, you both participated in something that we just put on over at Nassau. We called it the Solve-a-thon. Mm-hmm. So Nassau's departments collected a series of opportunities, provided them to the Reimagine companies, and it created a situation. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, but created a situation where a carrier came to the startups and said, listen, here are the opportunities. We know your strengths, but how can you utilize your strengths for our opportunities, and kind of come back and just say, here's how we'd help you solve this. I'm curious, is that something that a conversation like that that's happened in other places, or was that, you think, a unique thing to this point in time where people are opening up, they want to be more digital, transformative, and the conversations are flowing?
It's exactly. I think every carrier that has problems, right, instead of figuring out how they can internally build, it's great, right, to engage your IT partners, but how can you expedite your roadmap, right, of all the items, your priority list, when you engage with the startup? And I think I would assume that Nassau Re saw a lot of value. I know there was one winner, but Nassau Re probably saw a lot of value in terms of different startups and different unique ways that we can solve the problem, right? And at most it gives insights and allowing the carriers to be creative, and then potentially use companies like us to solve your other pain points.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
absolutely.
thought it was a great process. You know, it was, to me, it was very innovative. You know, when you look at, you know, things are changing.